Good afternoon, welcome to Show Studio. I'm very happy today to introduce my new guest, Sharmadean Reid. Hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. We're going to go back to London Fashion Week, and specifically we're going to discuss Gareth Pugh. Were you at the show?
No,
Okay, I was.
tell me all about it.
So I'm going to give a little introduction about the show itself, and then I guess we're going to see some images and we can discuss the clothes. So the show was, for me, the word is creepy, which doesn't mean wrong or bad, or I felt.
You felt something.
I felt
Yeah.
something really strong because it was in this incredible building, which is the
Freemasons.
Freemasons Hall, which for me already means things, very strong things happen there, and the karma is big.
Definitely.
And then the music was an organ playing sacred music. It was like a church mantra saying amen many times. Amen. Well, we will probably hear it. And then it started with this bodyguard accompany the priestess, who's actually a prima ballerina from the Paris Ballet, whose name is Marie-Agnès Gillot. And she came in with these two men and sat on the altar, and the show started. And all of that already put an atmosphere of, to me, of fear. And it set the theme, which was women power. And it was women power a la Gareth Pugh. I mean, he did it the previous season, he did it with color and happiness and red latex and in a fresh and light way. And this season it was in this, first of all, it was 9 p.m. because it was late and it was dark and it was amen, and I felt it was creepy. So,
But isn't that what he does that is amazing, is put you in a completely different space? I've always thought with his clothes, I've never actually physically put an item of clothing on, but when people talk about female power, I think, well, what is it about this that is making women feel powerful? And I think what he does is he makes the body do different things. So you're physically feeling something different. And the way that you said that it felt creepy, I think maybe, I wasn't there so it's hard for me to say, but maybe the feeling would have been of uncanny rather than creepy, when you know something's wrong but you don't quite know what it is.
I
Something a
didn't
bit
feel
off.
I agree
You
what you
know-
say, but I didn't feel wrong because those clothes were so desirable that sometimes the whole atmosphere for me was taking it away from the desire of the clothes.
Yeah.
Because we will go into that, but there were some looks that were amazing. Even stuff that I
So
wouldn't wear,
beautiful,
pencils,
so
blue pencil
beautiful,
skirt.
yeah.
I wouldn't, but it was very beautiful.
Yeah.
But what I thought it was, as you said at the beginning, his way to empower women. But this for me was on the verge of sarcastic. I don't know what you think, but you know, like the how do you call the
Like it was so
vacateur.
exaggerated that
With-
it seemed like
yeah.
it was taking the mick a little bit.
Yeah, because there were so many symbols describing that.
Yes.
There were even the attitude of the models, the Hannibal Lecter's mask,
The elastic.
the elastic that
Yeah.
was enhancing the cheek and filling up the lips. It was looking like as they went to the doctor and had pillow faces,
Yes,
freshly made.
yes.
For me, that's sarcastic. What do you think?
Do you know what it reminded me a little bit about? That film All About Eve. Have you ever seen this film?
I have seen it, but a long time ago, so I
Yeah,
don't know why.
so it's like about a young.
There is a lot of fashion in there.
a lot
Yeah.
of fashion, and it's such a beautiful film, but it really is that era of Hollywood of, you know, the 1940s and 50s, where women were so beautifully held up but also troubled and broken. So they were doing things like being alcoholics. All About Eve is a film where an older woman, Bet, is worried about a younger woman replacing her in the theatre. So
Yes.
in terms of a film about female empowerment, it kind of shows that even within this framework of Hollywood, women are worried about being upset by
Yeah,
other
they're
women.
vulnerable.
Yeah, they're vulnerable, even though they're meant to be powerful. So she's really glamorous on stage, as these women are.
But do you think
with
it's
their
still
hair
relevant
and everything.
today?
Well, yeah, I mean,
That was...
why I say it kind of reminds me of this is only because when you say it's being sarcastic, it really changed my perception of, okay, is he making a comment about the fact that there is power, but the pillow faces, etc., we're still being forced to conform.
They're like in a cage.
Yeah, we're still trapped in a way. There's still like a trapped element.
One
Do you
thing
know
he
what I
said,
mean? There's still like a way that you have to be. So when I say about the way he makes your body move differently, I think like the waist and those dresses that went straight up here, I'm like, as soon as you put that on, you're going to walk differently, you're going to feel differently. And when I think about his, like when he first started out, where everything had different voluminous proportions, it makes the women's body move in a different way, although now it's what you could be called more classic.
No, but I agree with that, and it's funny because when I was watching this there, I thought a lot about when I started wearing Lee McQueen's clothes, and I felt exactly that, and I could see it in there. I mean, this probably British tailoring, I don't know if I can call it like that, but where you see something like, ooh, I'm not sure, and then you put it on and you cannot take it off anymore because you become beautiful, you know, and I think Lee had the same power on women, and at least on me, of making me feel like the most powerful woman. But that's why I'm like, did we need everything else, all this symbology around it? And then suddenly you've got those star printed on fabrics, and it's like, what do they have to do? He talked about politics. He talked about, in an interview or something I read, about where the world is today and how disappointing it is, what's happening, you know, like the banking system that let us down, the politicians that let us down. And it was his way of saying, maybe women should take the world, take care of it.
Well,
I didn't particularly like these women because I couldn't see the vulnerability, which I think is so sexy in a woman.
Interesting. I would never have thought. Yeah, I get what you mean about vulnerability being sexy, but that's coming from years of a male perspective of how we see women. Do you know what I mean? I think I do, yes. I started watching John Berger's Ways of Seeing. My assistant's writing her dissertation on the male gaze. So I said, let me know if you need any help. And we watched the John Berger's Ways of Seeing documentary. And, you know, there's a whole bit in it which is how women are used to being looked at. They're either being looked at by a man or being looked at by other women. Or they hold up a mirror and they're looking at themselves. And their entire relationship of seeing themselves is always through these different funnels. So I think the vulnerability element is something that's basically so ingrained in our Western like ideology that you can't help but feel a little bit repulsed maybe when you see a woman like this, because it's not something that you're necessarily used to in such a heavy way. Because when I'm watching this in the space,
power?
Yeah, when I'm watching this in the space,
yeah.
When I first saw the stills, because I wasn't at the show, it made me think of, for some reason, I started thinking of like Asian women, like Asian kind of boss women. Do you know what I mean?
Was that the makeup?
No,
was that
like
the elastic?
It was the fact that the look's so expensive. Like whenever I go to Asia, whenever I go to Hong Kong or Bangkok, the women look so expensive. Always.
It's true. They are very rich.
They look so expensive. They look rich, and they hold themselves with such a grace and power that even if they're housewives, they look like boss bitch housewives. Do you know what I mean? So when I first saw the stills, I was like, this looks very Asian, and I thought,
very interesting. I didn't think about that.
Not Asian influence, but something an Asian woman might wear, like the most luxurious, expensive leathers and fabrics. Like, look at that. I can totally imagine, you know, some Asian, like, expensive woman wearing something like this with the gloves and everything. So I was like, oh, okay, it looks very, like, elegantly expensive. But now I'm watching the video, and this is why I think fashion shows are always so important. To get the feeling, yeah. It looks actually quite oppressive. Like, the building looks weighty.
And I was very sad.
There's, like, it looks like a thickness in the air.
I was very sad because I was, part of me was absolutely loving the clothes, but part of me was pushing everything away. I just couldn't wait to be out of there.
Oh, really?
And I don't know if that was in the intention of Gareth, who's an amazing designer. Yeah. And I remember adoring his last show. I went out of that room in Soho on the car park.
Yeah, you felt elated.
Jumping and singing. And here I went out and I got in the car and said, get me out of here, you know, which is a pity, because then I went home, looked at the stills and thought, those camel hair coats and those shirling. I mean, he did it so beautifully, and the tailoring and the flares, everything is so desirable. And another thing that now that I've done a whole fashion month, is probably the only one that didn't have any of all the cliche trends that we've seen everywhere. The
I
only
agree.
one. And
No
that for
trend,
me is,
yeah.
thank you. It exists,
I
you know.
totally agree.
Because then everybody did sequins in a different way.
Yeah.
Everybody did sheer in a different way.
Yeah.
And he didn't do it at all. It's so different from anything else I've seen for a whole month.
And that's always kind
It's
of
refreshing.
what he does. He does his own thing. I respect him so much. He's such a visionary. Like I respect anyone who has like a specific taste and just sticks to it.
I love
like
it.
runs
Yeah.
with it.
He
Like
knows
he's not
what-
like
yeah.
what you said about not being trend led. That's never ever been his like remit, has it?
No.
To go think about
No.
what anyone else is doing, and you know, I just think maybe the oppressiveness is to drive you to a different place. Sometimes I think, you know, like when you get sad or melancholy and people are like, oh, we gotta be happy, and I think no, sometimes it's good
Oh,
to
I so agree with
wallow
you.
in
Let
your
me
emotions.
be.
Like feel.
Yeah.
I think feeling is one of the most
Yeah, but this-
precious
but
things
you know,
we have.
here is the whole
so I think
discussion
he's
about-
moving you.
but
He's
about-
moving you to an uncomfortable space. Like what?
did.
You know what I mean? That's
But this is the whole discussion about then the role of the show itself, because then you can go to the showroom and see this clothes in a totally different way. As I said, you were looking at the stills, but that makeup, you know, the cannibal
Yeah,
masks.
yeah.
I mean, that's a big statement.
Yeah.
And the elastic that we're making those pillow faces that are so, you know, repulsive in
Yeah.
a way. You don't want to be that. And then the most elegant women, and also the prima ballerina being a bodyguard. So for me, ballet is light,
Yeah.
is flowing, it's the opposite of it. And then you have this ballerina who walks like a ballerina, which is very beautiful.
Yeah.
But she's having that amazing military
military
coat,
coat. Yeah.
you know, with huge trousers, sitting like a man on a throne. You know, it's like, oh my God, what's going on here? So it would be lovely to have him here and tell us something more.
Why? Yeah. Do you not think maybe I'm just like going really off key here, but the 40s-ness of it, and I
Yeah.
think ballet had such its you know, heyday in that kind of war and post-war, pre and post-war period. Is he not just trying to say something about, you know, the role of ballet? Her as a person, as a prima ballerina, would not be in that way of power of having the position of watching everything. You know, like I always say that when I think about fashion, just because the last time that I was truly theoretical about it and I was writing my dissertation on fascism, it was like so many political leaders used art to sway opinion. So they would hold you hear about it a lot even now, how a government will invite an artist to do a performance for something that says something to the country, you know.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
that happens quite a lot.
Or put them in prison not to say something to the
or the other way. But you
Yeah.
know, like I struggle to think of a modern day example of it now. But I just think of like a certain prince of a country inviting an artist to do a performance to kind of get the people inspired in a certain way, and it would always be the man, the government leader, the male government leader, sitting there watching this performance happening. Maybe he's trying to say now it's her turn. Like she's no longer the performing artist. She's actually like the boss
That's very
watching over the
interesting.
performance, you know.
That's very interesting.
Because I can't think why else would she be there? Like why else
It
would
made
she...
me think about the first women's president of the United States.
Yeah.
Maybe that could happen. You know, it's
Yeah.
very, I think all of this is quite relevant in a way. The atmosphere for me was not really. So if there was any political thing behind it, and the clothes, by the way,
Yeah.
was very relevant. For my heart, the whole thing was not that much, but I probably missed some meaning. And what you just said is very interesting about the prima ballerina being, you know, the boss and the
she's no longer
observer instead of the observed.
Yeah. And again, that goes back to this whole male-female gaze, right? It's like she's used to being watched and either like exalted, adored, or, you know, one of the things about ballet that was highlighted so much in Black Swan is how competitive it is
Oh,
amongst
yeah,
women. In
fiercely.
fact, now that I've said it, it's a bit like All About Eve. It is that Black Swan is the same thing. It's like someone's replacing the queen bee
Yeah.
in the performance.
Or holding
So
on
in
to
All
the
About
power.
Eve, she's an actress, she's in the theatre, and she's worried about being replaced by a younger one. Black Swan, it's the same thing. And ballet, that is a big deal, that people are so furiously working hard to be the prima ballerina. The pressure that they must have felt. Imagine what it feels like for her now to not have that pressure. She's actually just watching someone else, and instead,
She
like,
must
the
have loved
models
this.
are having the
She
pressure.
must have
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
It must have actually just been quite relaxing to be like, do you know
Yeah.
what? Nobody's looking at me anymore. Nobody's waiting for me to fall or fail or do
Yeah.
something, you know?
Whoa, yeah, that's very true. But let me go back to the clothes for a little while, and then maybe we discuss a little bit more of London in general. Someone said that it was his way of performing something around the collection, that it's more wearable. And you know, people still
Yeah,
think
yeah,
that
yeah.
commercial wearable is a dirty word,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
I don't think,
yeah.
because if this is commercial, welcome. I mean,
Yeah.
this is great fashion
So
at the
good.
same time. So what do you think? Because I think there is a lot that anybody, I mean, that you can wear here, but I don't see it commercial at all. I just see it, you know, relevant to what we put on our backs.
I think that people often use this word commercial, like you said, as a dirty word, as in why, you know, someone who is avant-garde can't move into a space where they make things that sell. I don't think he is thinking, I need to make this a bit more downplayed so it sells. This is the space that
He
he
was
is
in.
in. So he's going to make clothes of this ilk. And when I looked back through his previous, you know, through the archive, actually lots of it's wearable.
Yes, much more than you think.
I feel like what happens in fashion press sometimes is that because there has to be these players, right, in the sitcom of fashion, there has to be the young gun who does crazy stuff. There has to be like an ethnic person that draws on their background. Like there has to be like a girl who's doing like menswear, or like there's all these people, right, that play on this stage. Their roles. And just like what you said about McQueen, that was a definite role, and you know, that comparison between Gareth Pugh and McQueen is often made. But I think, why are they being pigeonholed 10 years, 11 years later? If you look back 5-6 years ago even, there are things you can wear. It's just the way that it's presented or styled
Absolutely.
or photographed. There are still beautiful dresses, beautiful trousers. There are themes that are the same, like monochrome. Monochrome is one of the most wearable things.
Yeah, but that's
the black
why,
and white,
maybe
and the
so
red
it's,
and the
it's
black
only
and
the
white.
styling of this
Yeah.
that makes it more approachable. Because I keep hearing from people not really in the industry, like,
Yeah.
how can you say it was a good show? I mean, who wears that? And I don't even know what to reply anymore. It's a little bit like when people go to a contemporary art show and like, oh, I could do it myself, you know, which makes me shiver.
So many people, say things like that. I have arguments regularly.
But
with
sometimes
people
it's the styling, and I think in this one, when the set was very strong, and I repeat, you know, to the point that could be uncomfortable, the styling, apart from, you know, from the chin
head
up,
yeah.
was rather, no, I mean, I could go out in any of these.
Any of it.
Including
And
the star printed trousers, which I
Yeah.
think are absolutely delicious.
So the suiting is so good, and I think that what you said, if you chop off those heads, it's actually pretty like
Normal, yes.
you know, it's not something that would surprise you. I think the images may be normal, but where I personally expect, if I touch these pieces or put them on in real life, I'd expect the craftsmanship to be abnormal. Like I'd expect the pieces to be so well made, the tailoring to be so on point that it's not normal, as in like you wouldn't go on a high street and see that kind of thing, where so much of this I think could be easily replicated on the high street.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, I've seen it moving.
Yeah.
Very difficult to replicate.
That's
A,
what
those
I mean.
fabrics,
I feel
and
like
B,
the fabrics, the craftsmanship,
because
etc.
the way
but,
it's made makes a
course.
coat be that kind of coat.
But
So
if you look at, if you look at historically his collections, I don't think, say, a Topshop person would like look at it and be like, oh, I could wear that if you chop the heads off.
I don't think
But
in
now-
Topshop or Zara they have Gareth Pugh on their mood boards.
Yeah.
They have more Isabelle Marant, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, I agree. But do you not think some of these, like for instance, the blue silky dress, right? I was like, okay, that wrap-around dress, that is a beautiful dress.
Oh,
To anyone, I feel like it's a beautiful dress to someone, you know, a young girl to an older woman.
Probably that blue will appear here and there in some windows on the high street.
And that blue is so striking.
Not easy to wear though, but striking.
True.
You would look beautiful in that blue for sure.
I love blue.
Let me ask you a few questions. Did you follow a little bit London Fashion Week? Was there something that
not so
excited
much.
you?
Not so much, but if I see it, I can comment.
I would like.
You know
completely
why?
another.
Do you know why? Because right, this discussion has come up before on Show Studio. To me, when I worked in fashion, so my background is I went to Central St Martin's, I worked for Nicola and Kim Jones. I learned so much about clothing. I was really lucky. I loved being in fashion, and particularly menswear. So I worked at Arena under Joanne Furniss, and my whole thing was menswear and street and sportswear. It wasn't really women's wear so much. And this is pre-iPhone, pre-Instagram, all of this. And Joanne used to force me to go to parties, force me to do things, and I'd be like, but don't. And she's like, it's your job. Now I think people go and it's not their job.
No, absolutely.
They go for fun, and it's like, for me, it's like another bum on a seat, right? I'm like, that's not my job. There is someone in the industry who needs to be there. So I only look at London Fashion Week or follow what shows happen. Well, twofold. A, to buy things, because I'm like, what am I going to wear? To be inspired. But if they do something that is so... that will so affect pop culture that it's almost like watching a TV show that everyone's talking about and you haven't watched it yet, then I will see what's happening.
Yeah, but that's why I think, if I may, I think it's very true, but that's why I think that this month that just ended in Paris the day before yesterday was a little bit underwhelming in that sense, because usually when I follow the whole month and I feel what's going to happen, I think everybody's a bit confused at the moment, and that's why in London what stood out for me, not unexpectedly because she's a very good designer, was Merica Tranzo. Because, and I had a chat with her in Paris last week. I think she showed maturity.
Yeah.
She showed that she understood that the prints she started and became famous for could not be sustainable in the long term in that way. And she managed to do a collection which was offering something different, yet being very Merica Tranzo. And I've visited the collection in the showroom. It's even better than what you can see here. And I was very happy because I always thought that Mary is a very beautiful person.
Yeah.
She's a very smart woman. She's been very successful, very young. And I was always hoping that, I told her, so I can say it, I was a bit afraid that it would go nowhere.
Yeah.
And actually, I was sitting there and thinking, there she goes, that's my girl. And that's why I mentioned this collection above others, that there were other very exciting things, but this one, because for me, it was like a turning point on her career.
You know, I read an interview with her actually where she said pretty much the same thing, where she now, I think, either she got investment or she has a business partner or she has somebody thinking...
She has a CEO.
She has a CEO. Yes, and I think that is one of the most mature things a London designer could 2 months ago. To say, you know what, this is a business, this is long term, I need help. So, you know, the conversation around London Fashion Week tends to always be around the fact that it's so creative, but it's essentially an incubator for who's going to succeed and who's going to fail. And it's business. And unfortunately, I think, and you know, I've suffered from this myself with my own business, is that in the early days, you focus so much on, I want to do the best clothes, I want to say this, I want to communicate this. And then you're like, okay, but what about 5 years' time? Like, what are you going to do? No, it's almost like ugly to try and apply this business side to fashion when you're one person. And Gareth, you know, just to bring it back, he kind of often says how he loves the fact that he's small and he doesn't have to answer to all of these people about whether something's going to sell. So I think that, but then he has a business partner still now, which is amazing, but it's a creative one who's going to understand him. I think that to hire someone who's going to run your business so that you can concentrate on the creativity is something all London designers should be thinking about when they start. We're in a startup age. We're in an age of startups, you know.
You need to be able to afford them though, because even if you don't pay them like you pay the CEO of General Electric, you still need to pay them.
Could be share options, could be a business angel. It could be so many, there's so many people, like, and I hope that I become one of these people when I'm older, who just like seeing and supporting talent, you know? Like, there are people who, if you've got time and you can spare like 1 or 2 days a week to help someone with their business strategy, you would just do it if you're rich and you don't need to earn the money to do it.
I do need to earn money, but I do that a lot with young people.
Like
however, being the CEO of a brand, it's a full-time job, especially of a new it's not a startup anymore.
But she probably wouldn't have been able to do that when she started, right? But now she can. How many years later?
But about 6 months ago, she told me I need a business partner now because it's too big now for me to take care of everything. I mean, this is a brand that turns around millions already. It's not a 10 grand or 100 grand brand. I mean, she really did well.
Wow, look at that.
And one thing that she said to me that corroborate or whatever you just said is that she's always been one of the people supported by Swarovski. And you know, when Swarovski chooses emerging designers, they give them stones, rhinestones, but also some money. But then they have to produce a collection with at least a few looks with that. And she said to me, and that's so smart, I went to Swarovski and I said, let us do it in a commercial way. I know you don't support me anymore because I have emerged, but I want to do Swarovski in a way that I can also sell it. Because she said usually it was for the sample and then it would have been too expensive to produce. The Swarovski I put in this collection, it's reproducible. So the pieces are 2 brands, which not everybody has, but it's not 20. And I thought, she's so clever.
She's so smart.
And she did it. And you can't really see it here, but there's some pieces that are so modern and so relevant and it's full of sparkling rhinestones. So I think kudos for Mary. She really did a good job.
Definitely. It's, I mean, like I said, you should probably look at her and think, like, you know, designers who are coming up or launching their business or 2-3 seasons in, or about to make that move from being emerging to a fully emerged. That they should be looking at it as a proper business strategy, because I just think there are so many young designers that I see that could be so, like, they're so hot but they're not commercially successful.
Viable.
Because, like, I don't think they think of a business, like, they might loosely know, so many brands make money on accessories, fragrance, etc., etc. But I'm thinking, if you know that, why are you not producing it? Why have you not designed a wallet? Why have you designed a collection and you've not designed a wallet or a bag or, you know, a scarf or a hat, etc.? Because I think the designers benefit from hype, from celebrity, from being in the magazines, from being profiled a lot when they're young. It's all about their profile, but not necessarily you see the clothes.
Well, that's a very good point, because people think
a range plan that
people
is
think
commercial.
that certain brands are very big because they have a lot of press around there. Actually, they don't sell, and vice versa. They think some brands don't exist because nobody talks about them, and they make billions. However, a bag will, or a fragrance, even better, will only sell if your name is hot. So some people tried and failed because, unfortunately, a fragrance has to be a good bottle, a good name, a good scent, a lot of money in advertising, by the way, much more than any other category. However, it will not work if your name is not cool or hot or hip or whatever.
But there's always like a sweet spot. I feel like there's a sweet spot, and I've seen it happen with friends. There's a sweet spot when you're so hot, you probably could sell anything, especially online and immediate right now, and people would buy it. Like Rihanna wearing a Claire Barrow item. You know, if
she makes the brand.
You could be selling that. I mean, Claire Barrow has an amazing online shop, and Claire does things like that. She has phone cases, she has a scarf, she has like smaller items in the range that someone could go on and buy, and her website's really good. And also, again, I love her because to me she's total visionary. But the point is that there's a sweet spot when you're young, creative, cool, profiled, hot, a celebrity wears you, and then there's the chance for explosion. And I feel like that chance needs to be navigated by a business person? Because there's so many factors, the distribution, like what you've said,
I have
the
so many
packaging,
examples.
the bottle, the advertising campaign. Like, you don't have space to think about that when you just want to be an artist and make beautiful clothes.
Yeah,
like,
but again, there are business reasons behind it. Sometimes it doesn't happen, or it happens in the wrong way, because there are licenses that can ruin your brand, but then you don't have the money to produce a fragrance. As you say, you know, I remember when Lee designed that scarf.
Yes.
It was in a collection, and that year McQueen made more money than any year, because they sold 25,000 pieces.
I remember that.
On the first year. And then we went, I was still working for the group, we went to Lee and we said, you have to design new colors. And he said, no, that was a seasonal thing. So we had to sit him down and explain to him that that thing was actually financing a lot of other things. And the scarf still sells, still exists. But it was very hard for such a visionary designer. For him, it was old. So you have to explain.
He's like, why would I want to repeat
So
myself?
you also have to be careful the way you talk to these people. When they are at that level of visionary and creativity, you can't just say, oh, let's do a, you know, carryover. I mean, you can. There are some designers that are more business oriented, and you can. Others that like, but no, that was my idea last year. Oh my God, that's a horrible thing to do.
I feel like everyone can be turned around though when it comes to the life and longevity of their business. And I just think people often talk about labels and brands, but no one ever talks about it like a business. Yet we're in an environment right now where in London so much investment money is pouring into different sectors, but nobody ever thinks about it from a fashion point of view to go and raise money. I remember, like, when I was younger and like working, I remember working for Kim Jones, and I remember like Asia always financing London designers, like Japanese people were financing London designers. And I think you could approach your you know, your brand as a business and think about it from the start to say, okay, this is what I'm trying to communicate, but I do need someone and I'm going to raise money. And instead of like, oh, you design a collection and you have all these sketchbooks and mood boards as the process of the collection, I think the same could be done for a business plan. And I just think no one, I say it because I just think this culture doesn't exist within fashion. Like the British Fashion Council.
Trust me. I mean, I will have to
interrupt
you because we're over time.
Please tell me more.
I hope you come back, because I work with so many people, even more established than you think, that would like to have a backer. Yeah. It's not that easy, but I have to close.
Okay.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.